Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Ecclesiastes study. We're in chapter 10, and Solomon's about to start wrapping up this book. In this chapter, he's going to be talking about a contrast between wisdom and folly and talking about the value of wisdom, which he briefly started talking about at the end of chapter 9, but he's going to continue that basically for the entire chapter, the entirety of chapter 10. So if you would like our PDF, you can download it on our website at tobelikechrist.com. That first page has kind of short summaries, 2-3 sentence summaries of each chapter. And now we can go over to page number 2 and take a look at the details for chapter 10. Our first and only section today, wisdom and folly. It is the total 20 verses of the chapter. I think for today, I'm probably just going to read off my notes. I've been sick for 2 days. I was running a fever last night, didn't sleep well, so it might just be better for everybody if I just read from the notes as to not say anything delusional. So, as I already mentioned, this is a continuation of chapter 9. And Solomon here says that a little folly can ruin a great deal of wisdom. Like dead flies in perfume. Yeah, that's his illustration. You can have 99% pure, great smelling, beautiful perfume, but if you got a fly mixed in there, right, you're not going to be able to sell it. It's going to be useless, and the fly might end up, rotting or decaying in there and tainting the good smell of the perfume or the ointment. I should mention as we get into this chapter that it's very reminiscent of Proverbs. Solomon's going to talk about a variety of different things that are touched by either wisdom or folly. So if it seems like we're kind of jumping from one topic to another, it's kind of like those verses back in Proverbs. Solomon says next that wisdom is slow to anger, knowing that calmness is of great value when you're trying to settle disputes or arguments. In Solomon's experience, he says that he had seen many instances where foolish men had been promoted to positions of authority over wise men, and he said that this was an error, right? This was a failing to recognize that wisdom was important and recognize wisdom in people. Unfortunately, kings and rulers sometimes don't always do the best job at picking people. And sometimes it's the foolish, goofy people who end up with the good jobs, and the wise people who really should have those jobs are, demoted to something less. A fool who tries to trap his neighbor will become a victim of his own schemes. A thief who tries to break down his neighbor's wall, or maybe this is somebody who's trying to break down the border wall of his neighbor's field, he's going to be bitten by a snake. The snake there kind of representing the negative consequences that someone's going to get for this kind of foolish action. A fool goes to work without sharpening his axe head. A wise person sharpens it beforehand because he knows that it's going to make his work quicker and easier. A fool is like an inefficient snake charmer who's bitten before he can get his work done in charming the snake. A wise man is going to be very careful with his words. His words are going to be chosen in a way that wins him favor and friends. But a fool's words are his downfall. And we'll come back to this idea in the application section. Fools are exhausted with any kind of work because they lack the knowledge to do almost anything. Solomon uses a phrase there that seems like a proverb. He says, a fool's going to be exhausted because he doesn't know his way back to the city, which I think is what he's really saying is like he doesn't know even the simplest stuff. He walks out of the city and he doesn't know how to get back, right? So what he's saying is fools are exhausted because they just don't have any talents or abilities or the competence to do, the most basic things. Now, he's going to talk next about nations and the rulers of nations and what a nation is going to look like if it's led by foolish people versus wise people. A weak nation is led by fools, princes who feast and get drunk at all hours of the day. They're just there to enjoy themselves and using the privileges of their position to enjoy their own lives, not caring about the rest of the affairs of the kingdom. A strong nation is led by noble and wise princes who know when it's time for feasting and when it isn't, and those who go to the feast to get strong from the food and the strength that it provides rather than just to get drunk. Solomon, speaking from the perspective of the foolish rulers, he says that food is just for laughter, wine is just for drunken gladness, and money solves everything. But what he's saying is that isn't true. That's the mindset of the foolish ruler. And what's going to happen is that the roof of their house is going to cave in. Their poor management of their kingdom causes the roof to fall in, causes the kingdom to fall apart. Solomon's final word of advice in this chapter was to counsel his readers not to curse the king, even if the king was a lazy, feasting, gluttonous drunkard. And the reason for that is because it's very easy for someone to overhear and report on them if they hear something negative about the king. He said, quote, "For a bird of the air will carry your voice, or some winged creature tell the matter." So I thought that last phrase was really interesting, and somebody pointed out to me the other day that they wondered if the English phrase, "a little bird told me," that's not like a super common phrase, but maybe you know some information, and maybe somebody asks you, like, "How do you know that?" And you respond, "Oh, a little bird told me." They didn't think that you knew, but you knew somehow, and so we say, "Oh, a little bird told me." I wonder if that phrase comes from this part of Ecclesiastes. I don't know. It seems like it very well might. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about our application. A wise person guards their words carefully and doesn't speak freely to everybody. A wise person doesn't gossip about others. That's something we're also warned about in the New Testament. Christians shouldn't be gossiping about anybody. They don't gossip because they know that their words have a way of circulating in ways that they don't intend. If you've lived any length of time around other human beings, you'll know that it's very easy for our words to travel to places that we don't really want them to go, where we never intended for them to go. Sometimes you trust people to keep a secret and they don't. Sometimes you're overheard by a person who you didn't know was listening. Sometimes a detail gets leaked that was only intended for certain ears. A Christian who lets their mouth run unchecked is like the fool that's described in this chapter, who multiplies words. This is an application and a principle that not everyone struggles with. Some people don't really care to talk that much, but there are others who they love to talk. They love to hear the sound of their own voice. They always have something to say, and maybe some people really love to gossip. And the principle is here is like if that's you, just letting your mouth run without thinking about what you're doing, who you're talking about, where this information could go that you don't want it to go, who this information could harm, how this information could harm yourself. It's like that is really a foolish way to live and a foolish way to use your mouth. So if you are somebody who struggles with, really loving to talk, and especially if you really love talking about other people, this is an application for you. All right, that is Ecclesiastes 10, and Lord willing, we will talk about chapter 11 tomorrow.